Welcome back to Creating Stuff. I am back working on the MGB fuel injection, and you have to excuse me, but I just got off of working 72 hours straight at my full-time job, so I'm a little tired. I got a few other things I got to do before I really start to get to work on this, but I want to show you what's going on with this car in this episode. Now, in this episode, in the previous episodes, I've covered the process of making the throttle body adapter. I ended up covering the process of getting the temperature sensor fitted into the car. And now we're going to go on to some more boring stuff. We got to do everything else. So we have to do the electrical, the fuel system, probably a throttle cable. And we got to weld in an O2 sensor. So before I get started, I'm going to show you a little bit what's going on. And probably the first and most important thing we have to do is we have to upgrade the fuel delivery system. Now that's the best way to describe it, but fuel is because the fuel injection requires a lot more fuel pressure than a carburetor does, and so we have to add a higher pressure and volume fuel pump. So that actually comes in the kit along with the fuel filters. But then in addition to that is, since the throttle body has a built-in fuel pressure regulator, we have to add a fuel return line. So, like I said, the carburetor did not need a fuel return line because it didn't provide enough that much volume. So that's probably the big thing that I'm going to be doing. And actually, in the last couple days while I was working, my dad actually stopped by and he did a little work on it. So I got a little bit of a head start. So I'm going to show you what we got going on with the fuel system. Now, to start this off, we're on the back passenger side of the car. And basically the new, once again, we actually have to add a fuel line to this because this car only had a fuel supply line and we have to add a return line. So, and luckily, this particular car, this is where the fuel tank sending unit went, and apparently there was an option to have a fuel pickup with this sending unit for whatever that applied to. So what the plan is, the original fuel pickup, which goes in on the top side of the tank, or the other, I believe it's the other side, we're going to use the original fuel delivery line as the return line. And then this is going to actually be the fuel pickup. So Holley is actually very, basically they've had enough problems, so they provide you with a fuel filter to go before and after the fuel pump. So you have a filter, and my dad wanted an additional one, and that's perfect, little extra protection. So we got the very first fuel filter here, and then we have the first Holley fuel filter up there. And basically what that does, that prevents trash from getting into the pump and hurting the pump. And then basically the fuel line runs up here, and down over here is where the actual fuel pump, and this came with the kit for the Holley Sniper. So like I said, this runs to the spec that throttle body needs. So that's mounted right here. This is as far as he got, so I got to run the fuel line the rest of the way forward up to the throttle body. So that's as far as my dad got, and I'll take it the rest of the way. Not a big deal. So and then the original fuel line we're going to use as the return. And part of the reason why we're doing that is because the Sniper, with this fuel pump, it does a much higher volume, and it needs to be a larger diameter fuel line. And I highly recommend, if Holley says to do something, I would do it. If it says to run a specific size fuel line, run that size fuel line. If it says to do a specific kind of electrical connection, do it. And when I get to the electrical, I'll cover more about that. And then also, then if you don't have, like, once again, if you have to modify a tank for a fuel return line, one thing I want you to keep in mind is where the return comes, you actually want the tube inside the tank to be below the fuel level when it sprays the excess fuel back in the tank. And it does that for two reasons. Number one is going to keep it from splashing. Is if it comes up top and it sprays out, it's going to splash like a waterfall, and it can foam the gas up. And that's not real good. And then the other reason is when it's splashing, the fuel is doing more work, so there's more friction, so it's a better chance that the fuel can get hot, which on average, with as much fuel pressure gets returned back, this gas will actually get a little bit warm for you. That's completely normal. So, but there's the reason why you want the fuel return line down below the fuel level when it returns the fuel back in the tank. So that's why using the original fuel pickup for that. And like I said, luckily we were able to add another intake with the fuel tank sending unit. So that's all done. So that's what's going on there. And moving on, before I get to work, I was just showing you another thing that I'm going to end up having to do. Is basically I'm going to end up adding the O2 sensor about right here. I'm actually going to drill a hole. I've got a fitting that I'm going to weld in place that this will thread into. And basically, and I've said in other videos, if you want to know where the intelligence I have comes from, is I read the instructions. And there's one thing that they're going to tell you in there, which makes sense, is basically when you mount the O2 sensor, do not mount it like this or like this, because that's the case. There's moisture in the exhaust gas, and moisture can get in here and won't drain out. You really want to mount it like so. You want to either mount it facing down, or you have to have some sort of angle to it, so any moisture that gets in there can drain out. So like I said, that is actually in the instructions for this. So, but and that's another thing I'm going to be doing. Well, before I get my work clothes on and doing some work, I've got some adult responsibilities I have to do. This is a lot of fun, but unfortunately, when you get stuck at work for a couple of days, you know, things back up at home. I'm a one-man band, so I have to take care of everything myself. So I got a few things I got to do before I can get my work clothes on and get to work. But in this episode, got a lot to show you. We got a lot that we need to accomplish. So anyways, well, I'll bring you back when I get my work clothes on and I get to work. So I'll see you then. I'm currently on the fuel system, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update, or not an update, but I just really wanted to show you what I was working on. Is the high pressure line was stopped right here, and I really felt better about running a steel hard line along the underside of the car. That can take a lot more punishment than a rubber hose. So I just got a piece of 3/8 steel line, ran it across, put a couple bends. I was able to shoehorn it in underneath this clamp with some of the other lines, and I did put some foam around it to isolate it from vibration and also prevent from chafing through it. And a couple bends up over top of the cross member, another cross member. Once again, I got foam around it and I secured it with a zip tie and a 45, and then I'm going to shoot a rubber line up to the fuel filter in the engine compartment. So anyways, but like I said, I'm happy with the steel hard line because it's a lot more protected than the rubber. So tell you what, this is a high pressure line. I'm going to go ahead and jump up in the engine compartment. We're going to keep on going. All right, now that we're up in the engine compartment, I really wanted to show you something before it got put together. This is the high pressure fuel filter that comes with the Sniper. Basically the other filters protect the pump from debris in the tank. This filter protects the injectors from the fuel pump coming apart. Basically, if anytime there's any kind of pump That's the largest source of debris that can be put into any fluid, whether it's hydraulic, fuel, or anything. So they're moving parts. They can create debris, and that's what this is to catch. So, but this is a neat little bracket I made. I've made brackets like this before. I had an existing bolt there. In all honesty, I'd probably feel better if I had an additional bolt, but it's not my car, so I'll let Dad put an extra bolt in it if he desires. I'm not drilling any extra holes in somebody else's car. So, but basically, I put a little bit of foam around this to protect it from chafing and from vibration, and it just sits right down in this bracket. And then these two tabs right here, basically, they're wide enough so I can clamp it with a hose clamp, and the T on the end will keep the hose clamp from sliding off once it gets tightened up. So I've made these brackets before. This is the first one. I made it a double. Most of the time I just do a single like that, but I decided to go a little above and beyond on this one. So just a little, yeah, I mean, I like being overkill. So, and I raised it up high enough so this discharge can go on top of this heater hose, right? Can go across the heater hose across to there. And then this hose I can put a nice sweeping turn and come into there. So, tell you what, I'm going to turn this camera off. I'm going to get all this done. I'll show you the finished product. All right, here is a peek on how the fuel system turned out up here, here in the engine compartment. You'll see down here, the fuel line comes up from underneath, has a nice sweeping curve, which is nice. The fuel filter is secured nicely, and then the fuel line continues over to the throttle body. So, and then the pressure side terminates right here. So, and hopefully the return line, trying to cheat a little bit, this is the return line. So a nice sweep and turn, and this is the original fuel supply line for the carburetor. So hopefully this should work well. That was nice and easy. So the fuel system about finished up. I do have to get back underneath and finish the new return line to the tank. I got to put one more piece of hose under there, but I'm not going to bother you with that. And tell you what, I think it's time to, I think I'm going to weld the O2 sensor in next, and then I'm going to be on to wiring. Oh, I thought I had a little spot of grease on there. So, this is moving right along. So, all right, well, I'll see you when I start tearing into the O2 sensor. All right, now that I got the fuel system all buttoned up, all the fuel lines done, now moving on to the next step I've got to do is have to install the O2 sensor. So once again, if you read the instructions, they're going to tell you something that's good to know. Is basically when I mount this, first and foremost, I'm going to mount it at the closest point where all the header tubes converge into one. That's where I want to put the O2 sensor. I don't want to put it in an individual runner, because then you only get the reading off of that one cylinder. So this is where we want to be. And this is a heated O2 sensor. It has 4 wires in it. So, so it can be all the way back here and work just fine. So unfortunately, I'll go back in time where basically people have worked on the first generation of electronic fuel injected cars back in the 80s. They would have a 1-wire O2 sensor because it did not have an internal heating element, and basically they had to be very, very close to the cylinder head. I mean, because it relied on the exhaust system to get it hot. But anyways, the heated O2 sensors are standard across the board on everything these days. So that's what they provide you. So, so anyways, going right here where they collect. And when I weld and when I put it in, I'm actually going to try to have it on a downsloping angle. So if any moisture gets inside the sensor, it'll actually drain out. If I put it like this, not only am I going to rip it off and hit a speed bump, but moisture can get in the sensor and it won't get out. So that can be a problem. So once again, going to do a slight downward slope. So, and what they give you the kit, if you don't know how to weld, they give you this little thing where you drill a hole, you can clamp it on that's what I'm doing with that. Luckily, I know how to weld. So I actually have a O2 sensor fitting. I'm gonna weld it right there. Sensor's gonna thread right in. I've already run my wire down from the throttle body. Has plenty of room to reach. That's a good thing. For any reason it doesn't, all you have to do is extend this harness. You cut it, and basically you cut it, splice it, add the amount of wire you need. Keep color matching to each color of the wire. Make sure you do good connections. You won't have an issue. Like I said, this is going to be long enough. It's going to work great. So tell you what, let me go ahead and get the drill. I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole, get this welded in, and take it from there. Well, there you have it. Oxygen sensor is now installed. Now I'm going to tackle the rest of the wiring. Happy times. The progress on this car continues. Now I'm on to wiring. A lot of people can be afraid of wiring. To me, I actually love it. I have a lot of fun. I can really wrap my head around it. But once again, I'm not here to brag about what I can do. I'm actually here to inspire someone to try to do more. So, but the nice thing is about the Holley Sniper, the wiring is actually very simple. You already saw the cable that runs down to the oxygen sensor. You have another cable that runs to the temperature sensor. And then the remainder cables that you need is you have your main harness, which already has a fuel pump relay and a fuse. Then you have a secondary harness, and then you have your 3-inch touchscreen display as your third one. So these things, it can look daunting, but the reality of it is probably one of the biggest reasons why I like the Sniper is because it's very adaptable. You can do a lot with it. It will do a lot for you. So, and the biggest thing to take the mystery out of all of this is this. Read the manual. Their manual is very good with all this. They tend to explain everything, and they have nice, pretty color pictures. So that's so that works very well. Pretty happy with it. So once again, just learn that it's all color coded, and to make this work, you don't need a whole lot. You have your main battery connections, which need to be hooked to the battery. And I will tell you this, if you see this page here, this is a lot of recommendations by them. Follow them. Trust me. Like I said, when I set my Sniper up on my FJ40, I had everything alligator clipped to get jumper lead, alligator clipped together, and it was throwing major issues. It wasn't working, however you want to call it. And when I finally did all the connections proper, I have not had an issue with it again. So good connections are very, very important. So, but once again, one of the most, but the most we need it to run is we have to have our constant 12-volt battery. We have to have a tach signal going to our negative of the ignition coil. Whether you have points or electronic ignition, it'll work. You have to have a switched ignition hot. That basically, that's your key. When you turn the ignition on, powers it up. When you turn the ignition off, it shuts it down. So, and that has to be hot while you're in the run and the start position. But it's all in this book. And then you have your wires running down to your fuel pump. So, once again, very simple, not a whole lot of wiring to it. And like I said, just read the book. And like I said, it's nothing to be afraid of. But once again, as I told you, when they recommend something, I suggest you follow it. Because the thing right here, where this page right here, where they talk about your tach signal, hooking it up, basically they don't want anything else hooked to the negative side of the ignition coil other than your points, electronic pickup, whatever. They want that and the sniper. Basically, they want you to run your they want you to run your tachometer, and anything else, you need a tach signal through the sniper, and that's just so it doesn't corrupt the signal. And that's actually a trick for somebody. If you ever have an intermittent miss in your vehicle, especially an older one, I had this happen in my rock crawling Toyota truck back in the 90s, where I had a very intermittent miss, and turns out my tachometer was shorted out, and it was shorting the ignition system out. So, but that's why they want it separated from the coil, and the sniper wants to send the signal to the tach. So, I'll tell you what, I'm going to jump over. I'm going to show you something on the car, which I currently don't have a wiring diagram for the car, but you don't have to have one to understand what's going on and what you need to do. So, let me jump over to the car real quick. I want to show you something. All right, now I am just going to explain a little bit of wiring. It might be a little hard to see, but down here on my ignition coil, this is the negative side of my ignition coil, and you notice I have 3 wires going into it right now. So one of them is going down to my distributor. So this car is equipped with Pertronics because they work way better than points and condensers. Points and condenser were state-of-the-art 100 years ago. I think we've evolved since then. So anyways, electronic ignition. Then we have this little blue wire that is kind of odd. And then we have this one that goes up here, and it actually goes into the factory harness of the car. So, and then the one thing I'm going to point out, so now we have, without even having a wiring diagram, I can figure out that I got to have the one down to the distributor. We got to have that one. And then these other two, this blue one off by itself is not factory. And if you follow it, we come to this. This is an aftermarket cruise control. They're not very expensive, and it makes antique cars a lot more pleasant to drive if you drive them long distance. So that's another thing for another story for another time. But that's the other thing on why doing fuel injection on this car is if the antique car is more comfortable, you're more likely to drive it and enjoy it. And that's what the cruise control does. So one of those, so that wire right there, I guarantee, is going to the cruise control. This wire and the only thing, since this car does not have a computer until now, the only thing that the tach signal is needed anywhere in this car is for the gauge cluster. So for the sheer fact that's going into the factory harness, I'm willing to bet money that that's going to the tachometer on the dash. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to pull all these off, and just like the diagram on that Holly recommends, I'm going to run a tach signal from here to the sniper, and then I'm going to take the tach output from the sniper, I'm going to run it back over here, I'm going to connect it to this little blue wire here and that yellow wire there. So that is the plan at the time. So that will satisfy what Holly wants. And I was able to figure that out without having to
without having to dig through a wiring diagram in a manual or anything like that. I just easily, simply deduce that. So, and then if all else fails, before I took the carburetors off, you could take the wires off one at a time, see what doesn't work, and that would do the same thing. And I guarantee you, you take that one off, the tack inside the car is not going to work. And technically, we could do without that. We could use the Holley Sniper digital display, which you'll see in a future video, to see RPM. But once again, I like factory gauges to work. All right, I hope I have made wiring as clear as mud, or at least what I'm going to be doing with this car. And also one last thing, this plug for the digital display, this is actually the Holley CAN bus. So where this plugs in is where, when I plug my laptop into it, I'm going to unplug this and plug the laptop into that same connector. They make Y connectors, so you don't have to unplug the dash, but I'm going to go over that in a future video, which actually, Melissa Holley's done a pretty good job. I'm real happy with it. So, but, and then, one last thing, and the other thing you'll find in the manual, a lot of the extra features and the extra wires, which will not be used in this, is if you have auxiliary cooling fans on your radiator, you can run them off of the Holley Sniper. So if you have two fans, you can have two separate outputs running them, and you can set them to come on at two different temperatures. So you could actually have one fan come on at 190, another one come on at 210 or 200, so you can actually step the fans in as they come in. Unfortunately, this car does not have any cooling electric fans, so we don't need to worry about that. And then another feature they have, which once again, this is very customizable, you can do a lot with it, is you can also, it has provisions for an AC kick, where basically, unfortunately, I come from the generation, if you wanted a turbocharged car, all you did was press the button to turn the AC off, and you got a lot more power. Basically, you can program it where it'll actually shut your air conditioning off. If your throttle goes, if you go past, say, 75% throttle, it'll actually turn your air conditioning off. Then it also has a feature that you can wire into your AC relay, that when your AC comes on, it'll actually idle the engine up a couple hundred RPM to help run the air conditioning. And once again, this car does not have air conditioning, so we're not worried about that. But the nice thing is the Holley has the capability to do that, and that's what I like about it. So tell you what, I'm going to quit my yakking, and I'm going to start wiring everything up, and I'm going to bring you back when I got something to show you. To start with the wiring, some of this is still not completely done. I want to wait till I have the final adapter on the throttle body before I tidy all this stuff up. But I think all the big connectors are going to live somewhere over here. I got two harnesses going across there. I ended up making this bracket to hold the fuel pump relay and the fuse. Basically, I just used the mounting holes for the throttle cable and did an elevated plate. It would have been easier just to mount through the bottom of this, but it's not my car. I'll let Dad drill holes in his car however he wants it. This throttle cable is the original one. It's too short. Waiting on that. Don't have that yet. Cruise control cable that has been in my way every step of the way. A few curse words came out of that. So anyways, I tied in over here to an ignition hot, an ignition hot over here for the signal, and then the main power wires go down. Then when I come over here to the other side, is you can't see it, but the main power wires, the battery on this car is behind the seats. So the main power wire and the fuel pump wires go down through the transmission tunnel underneath the car back to the fuel pump and the battery. So, and those are all hooked up. Like I said, I've already powered the Sniper up once, and it did the initial, I just fired it up just to make sure it had power. And then I have two harnesses coming over here. I have one where I tapped into the ignition, the tack signal for the Sniper, and then I put the tack put out from the Sniper over here and actually wired in to the factory tachometer and the cruise control. So that's all done. And one thing which I don't want to say I wasn't real happy about, it cost me a little bit more work, but you know what? Sometimes it's better to take the time, do it right, do something that you can be proud of, because since I'm going to be moving, or since I'm not moving, but since I'm putting the temperature sensor right here, I end up having to extend this wire for these two wires for this sensor. Because it would have reached, but I would have taken it straight over top of the manifolds. It would have been tight, but it would have fit. And I could have spun this around, but anyways, this is a good convenient spot. So all I did was extend the wires, and I was originally thinking about running it up over top of here, but still, I just kept it with all the other wiring, ran it over here, so all the wiring stays together, and then that's going to plug into your temperature sensor right there for the sniper. So I'm pretty happy with that. And then also I made a new bracket for the cruise control, which like I said, this ain't been a pain in my butt, because I originally had in the exact spot it was originally. Then it turned out that the cable was too short, so I had to turn this thing completely around like this. So now it has enough cable to reach the throttle. So that's all done. So this is moving right along. In all honesty, the biggest thing I'm missing at this point is I still don't have. I'm sure you figured out that although I broke this up into numerous videos, all the work is happening at the same time. So, but I'm getting very close to the initial startup. So, but I'm getting very, very close to the initial startup. But I'll get there. So,
I've been going pretty steady on this car all day. In a way, I want to apologize. I hadn't turned the camera on a whole lot. Unfortunately, when I get working, I get working. Some old friends of mine gave me a nickname a long time ago. They called me the mechanic on crack, because I'll work all day, and like 9 o'clock at night, I'll make a comment. It's like, man, my stomach hurts. And they're like, look, you crackhead, you've been working nonstop since 8 o'clock in the morning. You haven't had anything to eat. The only thing you've drank is Diet Coke. So you're hungry. So bottom line is, when I get going, I don't like to stop. And the biggest thing that stops me is when I run out of materials. And unfortunately, that's exactly where I'm at right now. So, because I'll show you closer what I did for the electrical. But one thing I did is I made a throttle bracket. This actually bolts on to the mounting bolts for the sniper, and then it has a spot for the throttle cable and the cruise control, because Dad likes his aftermarket cruise control on this car, which, I mean, I completely agree with it. So you can actually buy, they actually sell brackets that do this, but hey, this was fun. I cut it out on my plasma table, and the other thing was, I already had the design on there. I designed it for another car, but it should work. But right now, I'm at the point now where I got all the wiring run. I got everything hooked up. I actually powered the sniper up for the first time just to make sure it comes on. But right now, I'm waiting on parts to come in. I'm waiting on a throttle cable so I can put the throttle bracket in, and I'm waiting for a few other parts so I can finish this up. So tell you what, this is Jim from the future again. Jim from the past forgot to video an outro for this video, so I have to step in and take care of that. So I'm just here to say, I hope you like the video. I hope you find something you like. If you do like the video, please like the video, share it, subscribe if you're not. But this is project's getting very close to being done. One more video, and I'm going to do a first start on this, and I'm going to finish this car up. So tell you what, until then, until that video, be creative, and I'll see you next time.